Well, good morning, fam. It is another Freedom Friday, and you are still not free, but hopefully you will be freer after an hour of this conversation. I just want to show you right now. You just see me on the screen. That's because my Ace Bill Koyun, my brother in waiting, is not with me today. Sharif El Mekki. He will be here. But like many people in the world, he's got back-to-back things going on. So he's going to be about 10 minutes late, but he will be joining us still. So don't worry. You're not just flying solo with Chris. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about for us, by us in education, the reconstructing education for us, by us specifically. Part of the thing that we always talk about on Fridays is the history that should inform us when we think about the way that we should educate our kids today. What comes before us? What did our ancestors know? What is the Black educational capital that we have been neglecting over time for years? And Freedom Friday is a way for us to say, if we really want to be free, we will go back and reclaim and recapitalize some of that Black educational capital. I think a lot of it was lost in 1954 after Brown v. Board, but we certainly lost it in many times since then, many parts of our history since then. Just as a frame to start with, I have to always go back and say, let's remind ourselves that education is a uniquely African-American pursuit in America. African Americans gave you public education across the South, not just for Black folks, but for white folks too. In the Reconstruction era, there's no way to look at the genesis of what we call public education for all, free universal public education for all, and not see that much of it came at the pen and the hands of Black elected officials during Reconstruction for that short period of time where Blacks were put into a position where they could control some of the major governing systems in the South. And also the drive of African Americans to become literate, to learn to read, be numerate, become educated, starting from the periods when we were enslaved, and then shortly after emancipation, and then all through Reconstruction, and then all through the Civil Rights Movement, all the way until today. The African American pursuit of education has been consistent and strong and driving. And it's a shame that we come to a point today where we are tagged and labeled with the stereotype that we just don't value education. It is one of the most nasty and devilish things that has been done to us, to slander and libel us as people who don't care about education. So when I make points like this, I'm by myself, but I'm never standing by myself. I bring in big guns when I talk about these issues. And that way, y'all can't discount it, brother. So I am bringing in the biggest of my big guns, one of the most esteemed people I know in the universe, in my particular universe, because she speaks to us like we're people, real people. None of that nonsensical education BS where people have jargon-laden kind of rap songs that they sing from place to place, but they got zero receipts. This is the opposite of that. This is Kaya Henderson, CEO and founder of Reconstruction US, which is a multifunctional, multimedia learning platform that is unapologetically Black, that covers the things that your teachers might be leaving out and gives you a competent, strong platform to learn on that isn't just all bells and whistles and flavor of the month. It's actual real learning. It's real pedagogical prowess in one place. Kaya also is the co-host of Pod Save the People, which is a podcast that is award-winning and a national podcast with a large following. She's also a leader with Teach for All and a distinguished scholar in residence at Georgetown University. Kaya, good morning. Thank you for joining.
Good morning. It's good to be here.
You are such a bright light. You're such an amazing person. You are the echo of our ancestors, like just beaming. Like if they were sending us a message, it's you. You the message.
Oh my gosh, that is that is super nice. And you bring it out in me. What could I tell you?
Well, I want to hear about about this work that I know that you're excited about that you're doing now? Like, what? So for people listening and watching, what should they know about Reconstruction US, and what are you hoping to accomplish with it? For us in general, what are you hoping to accomplish with it?
So, Reconstruction US is an educational platform where young people and now grown-ups as well can have access to an unapologetically Black education. The idea, which you were part of helping to form, the idea was, we watch Jewish people send their kids to Hebrew school and Korean people send their kids to Korean school. Those other communities are intentional about the racial and cultural identity development of their kids. They don't wait for other government schools to teach their kids their history or to tell their kids who they are. And we come from a long tradition of that. And we wanted to rekindle that tradition at scale, drawing on citizenship schools, drawing on freedom schools. We've always been responsible for, or in our Sunday schools, or in our Jack and Jill groups, or wherever, all across our cultural organizations, all across our civic organizations, we've been intentional about telling our young people who they are. And we wanted to do this in a systematic way at scale, with the excellence and joy and love that, Black folks bring to the party. And so we developed a bunch of different courses, some academic, some cultural, some skills based, some book clubs, all kinds of things that allow our young people to come into a space that belongs to them, that feels safe, that is affirming of them, that is motivating, and where they can get their learn on.
I love it. I love it. I love it. What are you learning in the process now? Because you have been around for a little bit, and there are bugs. There are things to learn, and you have been very deliberate about your growth. You have been
We
very smart about it. So, what have you learned?
So, first of all, it's a little crazy to understand that we started this company last May. We wrote curriculum all summer, and we put our first kids on the platform in September. And so between September and now, we've had about 3,000 young people take
Wow.
classes on the platform. And our student satisfaction rate is a 4.83 out of 5, which is astounding to me, right? Because as you said, there are no bells and whistles. It's not gamified. It's not super fancy techy or whatever. What it is this three things. It is really good content, and it's a lot of content that kids are not learning in school, but kids wish that they were learning in school, or wish that they were seeing themselves in their communities in what they were learning. So there's great content. The sessions are led by a tutor. We call them reconstructors. And our tutors are largely college students, recent college graduates. We have some teachers, we have some retirees, but they are bringing energy and commitment and vibrancy to these conversations with these young people. Many of them are teaching for us because this is information that they didn't learn when they were in school. And then the third piece is being in conversations with kids that look like you from all around the country. I have a goddaughter, and she tells me that her Reconstruction course is her Brown Girls Club, where her friends
Mm.
from all over the country come together and read books. She lives in New Jersey. She's got friends in Chicago. She's got friends in New Orleans, and she's got friends in LA now. And that wouldn't be possible, right, without this Reconstruction experience. So from the content to the tutors to the community, that's the magic that is happening at Reconstruction. And so, we're excited. We've been slow in our development, and we haven't been, running around advertising a whole bunch because we wanted to get this right and do this at a level of excellence and of quality. I mean, you know how I roll, right? I'm not
Yes.
bringing junk to the table. So.
That's what I meant by you've been very deliberate. I mean, you've had this idea and you've been working on it for a long time, but it wasn't like something you rushed to market with.
Yeah.
And I love that because that means that we can trust it a little bit more,
Let's hope so. I mean,
Yeah.
for a really, really long time, wondered what a Saturday academy for Black kids might look like. And, there were a small group of us who actually started working on this idea of a national Black curriculum. What do we want all of our Black kids to know and to have read and to be exposed to before they leave high school? And the pandemic just proved to be an opportunity to kind of stop what I was doing. I was working at Teach for All, and I was leading work internationally. So I was flying all over the place, and that stopped abruptly, right? And it seemed like as good a time of any as to try this thing that had been a passion project and an idea for me. And I gotta let your listeners know that you are part of the reason why this thing kicked off. There were a lot of different things that helped, but you wrote a blog post and you said, did you hear about the meeting where all of the Black people are getting together to fix education, the fraternities and the sororities, the NAACP, the government, the everybody? And this meeting is happening, and people were up in arms about this blog post. Now, I am thorough, and so I read the whole thing. And of course, at the end, it says, this meeting is not happening, but it should be happening,
It's
right?
just a figment of my imagination. Yes, yes,
But
yeah.
my phone was ringing off the hook. Oh my God, Kaya, I know you're invited to the meeting. I didn't get invited to the meeting. Can you get me in? And I was like, oh, Jesus, can you just read to the bottom? There is no meeting.
People were so mad about that. They were so mad. They were like, why are you going to fool me like that?
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
what I was getting at in that blog post was that we are not poor and we are not without skills and we are not without smart people. So God has given us all these resources. It's like living in a resource rich nation that can't feed itself. I couldn't figure out why. We have so many great Black educators, scholars, researchers, you named it, fraternities, sororities, Jack and Jill. So all these organizations with social connections and power and budgets and infrastructure, and we can't educate 8 million Black children? Like, that seems weird. So I want to ask you this question about the position of Reconstruction.us. And what I mean by this is, to how far does it go in terms of is it a supplement to your education? Is it something that maybe micro schools or homeschooling Black parents could use collectively together? Can it be a replacement for actual full-time schooling? Like, what is the position of Reconstruction in the life of a Black family?
That's a great question. So it is 1, 2, and could potentially be 3. It is absolutely supplemental. We call ourselves proudly supplemental. We are complementing and supplementing what kids are learning in school. School is 180 days and 7.5 hours in most places. And so there's just not enough time to cover everything that you would like to cover. And so we feel like, and we don't want our history and our culture shoved into 43 minutes, in a period a couple times a month or for a semester. We wanted to have the luxury to spend all of the time that we want to on the topics that we think are important. So we made it an out of school time thing. And we call ourselves proudly supplemental. Many folks use us as after school or Saturday or for their enrichment periods or as an elective. At the same time, we're seeing a lot of interest and uptake from homeschoolers who can absolutely use this. We go out of our way to say we're not school because we want kids to have a different experience. But if you know me and you know that I ran DC public schools and you know that I'm about academic achievement, then you know that there is academic rigor in these courses. We looked at the Common Core reading, writing, and math standards because they are high standards and they're pretty universal. And we aligned our math courses. If you take a full year of Reconstruction 5th grade math, you've covered all of the concepts for a 5th grade math class. Our K-2 foundational reading, we are teaching straight up hardcore phonics and decoding because these babies need to learn how to read. And if school can't do it, we will. So there are lots of really hardcore academic classes that could be substituted. But there are 2 reasons why I didn't do this as an in-school play or as a replacement sort of play. Number 1, I fundamentally believe that in order to teach Black kids well, you got to love Black kids. And everybody who's teaching Black kids don't love Black kids. Everybody who's teaching Black kids don't believe in Black kids. And, we've seen enough hot mic episodes this year to confirm what we've already known, which is that there are people who stand up in front of our kids all day and say terrible things about our kids all night, right? And so I didn't want to put this curriculum, this responsibility in the hands of people who don't believe in Black children. And so we position this outside of school so that we could hire the people who would be teaching, so that we could guarantee that the folks who we put in front of kids are about it. And then the other reason, which is just sort of a reason of convenience, is 50 different states have 50 different state standards. I could spend all my time running around each state to make sure that my courses are up to this state standard or that state standard. And that's not how I want to spend my time. I want to spend my time developing really good curriculum. I believe that parents know what good curriculum looks like. They know when their kids are having different conversations with them at the dinner table. They know when their kids are asking to buy different kinds of books or go on different kinds of experiences. And so we haven't had one parent who said to us, oh, well, what standards are that aligned to, or what have you. We've had lots of teachers who are like, I can see where these are actually aligned to the standards, and I want to use this. We've had schools who want to substitute this, but I don't want the government in this business. This is our community dealing with our children, raising up the next generation of strong children so that we don't have to deal with broken men, as Frederick Douglass reminds us. Oh, I can't hear you. Wow. Uh-oh. Chris, I can't hear you. I don't know what happened.
You know what
Oh,
happened?
I can hear you now.
COINTELPRO, that's what happens. We start getting to a part that makes any serious, COINTELPRO kicks in just when I'm about to say something. Anyways, no, we don't want any broken men. I love the idea that you have been deliberate and careful about putting this together. I am super interested as a parent who is now staring down summer school and starting to think through my deep, like I have as a parent. I just have to just be honest and kind of open with you and with the audience. Is I think about this constantly, but I don't come to answers on some things. Sometimes I have the same problems that other parents have. Sometimes I go to sleep at times with in the back of my mind, knowing I'm not doing the best that we could possibly be doing for our kids, that there's some things they're missing, that just because of where we live and what's available to us, that it's not optimal. And it's a problem when you think so deeply about these things that you know what's possible, but you know you're not getting it. Like you start seeing like, oh my God, a much bigger realm of education is possible, but we're not getting it. So so we're looking at Reconstruction, for the summer. Just like what can we do? I'll give you a for instance. Ask my kids about history class, and I feel fairly astute. I pay attention to these things or whatnot, but the things that they haven't covered. And I have a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 14-year-old, almost 14-year-old, and they have not covered major portions of history. And my 14-year-old said, "Yeah, we've covered wars," is what he said. Wars. That's it. I'm like, so in your entire career of history, your history lesson so far has been wars, and mostly just two wars. Not when I say wars, not a lot of them. Not like they've taught them world history or anything like that. So I get the supplemental piece. I am definitely looking to go further than supplement and see if there's something that's almost hybrid, like, using something like Reconstruction to even go deeper than a few things here and there, but even more of like your primary will be some of this. Hopefully y'all get to the point one day. What we've learned about remote though, is that more people like it, but it's not
especially
all good.
Our folks. That's right.
Yeah, especially our
right.
folks. So are you learning that like more of us are open to some of these things than we may have thought before?
Absolutely. When we conceived of Reconstruction, it was way before the pandemic, and we wondered. We said we want to put it on a technology platform. We want this to be online so that kids, whether they are in Western Georgia or West Virginia or the Upper West Side of New York City, wherever kids are, they could actually access this content. And we wondered, will kids get on a Zoom call and have a conversation about, Black content that doesn't have anything to do with school, right? And we were worried. And voila, like one of the silver linings of the global pandemic is we actually learned that they will and they can. And many of them thrive in this environment. What we saw this year was a lot of young people, our courses happen in small groups. So you're generally in a group with anywhere from 4 to 10 young people. And at the very beginning, they were really smaller, 2 and 3 groups, groups of 2 and 3 kids on with a tutor. And what our kids said is like in class, I'm one of 25 on the screen, but at Reconstruction, it's just me and my people, right? Me and my friends. It's 3 of us or 4 of us. And so there's no hiding, there's no ducking, there's no, camera off. You're actually engaged. And our kids say they feel seen. Our kids say they, enjoy the interchange, the exchange. And so we've learned that absolutely. And I think, at a time, then we were worried, okay, well, now kids are zoomed out, right? They hate Zoom. They hate, they're on the technology all day long. And we're finding that kids who hate school Zoom love Reconstruction. They are busting down doors to get to their Reconstruction class on time and to be engaged. And so we're learning a lot. I mean, at the end of the day, here's what we know, right? When kids see themselves in curriculum, when kids feel affirmed, when kids are doing stuff that's fun, right? Like, we're not giving you math for math's sake. We're giving you problems to solve in the Black community. Oh, and math is the tool that you need to do that, right? When we engage kids this way, when we treat them, when we give them things that are worthy of their time and attention, when we empower them to lead and make decisions, right? Kids are super into it. We underestimate our kids all the time. And that's not what we do at Reconstruction. And kids respect that and respond to that.
It sounds to me like a big piece of this is the social interaction too. I hadn't really thought that much about it. I've been thinking about like your take on what will be your take on pedagogy and curriculum and that stuff. But this social piece too, I mean, it almost feels like, the online version of an HBCU for young people.
It's who we are. This is the thing about culturally responsive pedagogy. You take the things that are positive about a culture and you embed them in the way you teach. We are a communal people, right? We like to get together. We like to chit chat. We like to talk. We like to dance. We are
That's what it's
artists.
called the cookout. It's
That's
called
right.
the cookout.
We like to dance. We like to create. We've got a spoken word class, right, where kids are learning great Black speeches, Black poems, Black, rap lyrics, whatever, because we have an oratorical tradition in our culture. Why suppress that? We're telling these kids, be quiet, be quiet, be quiet. That's how other cultures are, right? We are expressive and emotional and oratorical. So let's bring that into the classroom.
What do you think? I love this as a learning. I definitely think it's smart to step outside of somebody else's frame and create your own frame. But if we had to step back into other people's frame, what do you hope that the mainline schools, I mean, you've been on both sides of this, on all sides of this, would start to learn to do better over time?
I mean,
I don't even know how to ask the question, Kai, because it's almost like, why haven't we learned this stuff already?
So, I mean, let's go back to a paper that you and I sort of wrote together as we were ideating about this. And we thought to ourselves, okay, we need to create our own thing first. We need to then institutionalize whatever this thing is within our HBCUs so that they become the centers of educational learning, reclaiming this educational capital that we lost, after Brown. And then let's teach the system how to teach our children, right? It's very important that was step 3 for us. Because, I don't care to spend my time knocking my head against a wall that is not going to fall down for me. I would much rather spend my time impacting the kids that I can impact with the influence that I have, right? So impacting the system is a secondary or a tertiary, ideal for me. I hope that they'll look over at us and be like, oh my God, what's going on over there? What are they doing? Why are those kids accelerating. Because my secret plan, frankly, is to give, second graders in Reconstruction fourth grade curriculum, right?
Mm-hmm.
My secret plan is to produce a set of kids who are so accelerated. If they want their kids to read by third grade, I want our kids to read by first grade, right? Like, I want to create a group of Black super children, right?
Wow.
That
Wow.
the world is not ready for. I want
Yeah.
people to wake up and be like, where did these kids come from? How did
Yeah.
they do this? And then I want the system to come and say, what's happening over here? Teach us how to do it. But still, I'm wary because, again, so much of this requires a belief in the capacity of these young people to do amazing things. I
Mm-hmm.
know they can, because I say all the time, people will say, oh my gosh, you're a unicorn. I'm not a unicorn. Or if I am a unicorn, I come from a herd of unicorns. There are a whole bunches of us out here. You just don't know where to find us. You just don't know how to recognize us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I want to
Well,
unleash the
Kaya, I don't
herd.
know if you're DC or Marvel, but I mean, everybody, all the world knows Wonder Woman. But when you go back to the island that she's from and you see that there's a whole bunch of Wonder Women
Yes.
there or
Yes.
whatnot, it's kind of eye-opening. But that's where
Yes.
we are right now. You're the Wonder Woman.
Mm.
You're the Wonder Woman in a lot of ways because, number one, first of all, when I said earlier that we have a lot of Black talent, we have a lot of resources and skills that we're not tapping into right now. Black women are one of those resources that are the remaining part of our educational Black capital that I said was lost. The little bit that we have left is all tied up in Black women.
Yeah.
It is all tied up in Black women educators, which brings me to my brother Sharif El Mekki, who's trying to get more brothers into the system. He's trying to get more Black males into teaching. Sharif, what's the statistic? What's the statistic, brother?
1.7. And to clarify, we're trying to bring both because we still need more dope sisters, more super women, more
we do.
herd.
But
yeah,
1.7,
but Black men, 1.7%, bro. 1.7%.
1.7%.
A couple years ago, it was 1.9%. So we're actually going backwards.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
I remember the 2% number because when I was leading DC public schools, we were lucky enough to have 19% Black men teaching, right? And that happens in, some chocolate cities like DC and maybe Atlanta or whatever. But we need to change that across the board.
Absolutely.
That literally means that there's probably more Black males at Weezer concerts than there are in public schools.
I don't know who Weezer is, but I would imagine.
That's my point. That's my point. That's my point.
I would imagine. Yeah. I mean,
that is my point.
When we talk to youth and they talk about seeing Black men, it's usually in a different type of role, maybe a custodian, and definitely the police, like how, and I think often that's how we're recruited. We're labeled in a certain way, even from the interview. I've spoken to so many Black men who said, like, I actually interviewed for this school, but central office moved me over here, and then later found out, and it was a match, right? The school wanted this Black man, he wanted to be there, and they switched him and said, like, oh yeah, we need more kind of authority, that presence. So we're going to just move you over here. So very early on, labeled and pigeonholed to serve in a very particular way. I think it's a reason we started the fellowship with 17 Black men from all over the country, and we were all in Philadelphia doing the work and successful, relatively good looking, the works, right? Like, and so, but what happened? Not a single one of us had been approached to teach until after we graduated college. There's a reason for that. When we asked our colleagues, most of them were white women, they said third grade was when someone tapped them on the shoulder and said, consider teaching. For us, it was after we graduated. And I think it was because, like, oh, Black man, come in here and get control of these Black kids, right? Mm-hmm, instead of in the beginning saying, hey, you know what? We trust you to engage and teach and educate. We weren't approached in that way, and from a lot of experiences.
Yeah, it almost seems systemic. I just wish there was a way to study systemic racism. It just seems like there should be a way to study it that I don't know about. Anyways, welcome, brother. Thank you for joining Freedom Friday. And we are still not free, but we're getting there. We're getting there with this content and thinking about these things. Did you hear Kaya say that she is trying to build Black super children?
I loved it.
Are you kidding me?
I loved it. She was like super children, where people say like,
Black
yo,
super
what's
children.
happening over there? Like,
Yes.
what's going on? Right. Like, and
Yes.
that's exactly. And you know what, when you get out of our way, you can ask that question a whole lot more. Right.
Yeah.
And I think this is but this is also what I love about it is just this, you know, it always comes back to Kuji Chakalia, self-determination, right? Like this sister is like, you know what? Nah, we're gonna do this. I remember we were was it New York, and you know, at the table having dinner, and y'all were like, you know what? Nah, we're about to unleash something, you know, like, because
this is where people don't know this. That's where this comes from, Problem Child. And and y'all can get the Problem Child shirt at citizensteward.com.
All right.
You know, because if we are doing our job, a system this jacked up, we should be raising problem children. We should be raising children that are a problem for this system. Because if the system is this jacked up, they don't deserve obedient children to go along with what they're being taught. We need to raise disruptors, but I love Kaya's way better of putting it, Black super children.
I mean, but we have to teach our children to be problem children, right?
Yes.
Because the schools are teaching them to be docile and to be calm and to not challenge authority and whatnot. We're in conversations with a professor at Morehouse, this amazing brother, Dr. Ilya Davis, and we're in conversations about him designing a critical thinking course that teaches you to challenge everything that you've learned and redefines what a fact is. And I mean, we were on the phone with this brother last week and we were like, yes, if our kids are asking these kinds of questions, like then I feel confident that we're raising problem children, right? Good troublemakers. And so that's what we want to do, right? Like that's that. we might have to incorporate that into the title of the course.
Yeah, I mean, the school should be safe places for you to do that, but it's probably, you know, for Black children, one of the most dangerous places to do.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah,
you know, like to challenge, like that takes practice, and you should have a safe space to do that, to critically think, to make mistakes, to challenge authority. Like, you know, because at the end of the day, we're always like, oh, yeah, we want them to be leaders. What does a leader do but challenge the status quo, you know? And so, but when do we afford them the time and space and safety to practice that?
You know, I should jump in here. We have a few people making comments, a lot of people making comments. Chioma actually chose violence this morning because she says there's only one chocolate city. So Chioma, thank you, Chioma, Dr. Chioma, for choosing violence in the morning. As a native of New Orleans, you know, whatever. Okay. But do y'all got a latte city? Huh? Y'all got a latte city? Whatever. There was a question also from Chioma, because she's in DC. Chioma does a lot of thinking and work around children with disabilities. Was wondering if you had any thoughts, Kaya, about how the supplemental education movement, out of school time movement, whatever we want to call it, for Black education, really takes on some of the issues that are being dropped by schools in special education.
Yeah, I think what I would say is I would love to talk to Chioma about how we do that well. We're in some conversations with some people around how we modify some of the lessons that we've created to make sure that a range of kids with special needs can actually access the courses. So Chioma, if you're looking for a job or you got some consulting time on your hands, hit a sister up, because we want to be able to reach all of our young people. We're not doing it well. I mean, we just haven't started there. But I think that part of the challenge is I don't even want to say that, right? I was going to say part of the challenge is in finding people who can help us do that, but that's BS, because I hear, you know, these publishing houses and whatnot say, I can't find Black curriculum developers. And like, I went out and found Black curriculum developers. And so we just have not been as intentional. I'm gonna make a commitment and say out loud, Chioma, if you help me, we're going to figure out a stable of people who can help us make sure that we're creating content for kids with special needs.
I will definitely connect y'all, because Chioma is the truth.
All right.
She is thetruth.com with a backslash and everything else.
Right.
So I will connect y'all. There was also a question I thought I saw in here somewhere. It was a little bit around the CRT stuff. And Sharif and I both wrote this week about this growing movement against CRT. Where this is landing that I think is dangerous is actually passing bills that forbid the teaching of critical race theory. Is this yet another reason, Kaya, where we might want to drive towards out of the system schooling, things that we can think about out of the system?
Absolutely. Like I can't hold up Black children's education to the whims of the state legislature, right? We got kids who are sitting in front of us right now. When I led DC public schools, I felt like my hair was on fire every single day because those kids didn't get another first grade year or another eighth grade year or whatever. So let the people do what they're going to do. Are we surprised about this? We shouldn't be. Right? History shows us that. So this one of the reasons why we call the company Reconstruction is hearkening back, Chris, to the 12 years, just 12 years after emancipation, where we got ourselves a little free, right? They didn't want to be bothered with us, but we were like, okay, we'll incorporate our own towns. We will own our own farmland. We will create 37 historically Black colleges and universities. Again, the people who don't care about education, 37 colleges and universities in 12 years, 5,000 community schools in 12 years, 300,000 Black people voted in an election that was decided with only 500,000 votes, right? So all of this, voting is irrelevant, blah, blah, blah. We elected our first Black congressmen, senators, right? Whole state legislature, South Carolina, right? Were predominantly Black. When they let us free, we did our thing. We were crushing it. And 12 years, remember, we're the lazy ones. We're the ones who didn't know anything. We're the ones who whatever. 12 years, boom. And they were like, you know what? This too much. Shut it down. And so the Ku Klux Klan and so Jim Crow, system legislation to stop us from doing our thing. This is as old as the hills. So whatever. And what do? We do what we do anyway. So let's just do it.
We survive. Each time after emancipation, they tried to shut it down. After Reconstruction, they tried to shut it down. After civil rights or desegregation, they tried to shut it down. And civil rights, they tried to shut it down. And affirmative action, they tried to shut it down. No matter, it's the Maya Angelou theory, though, no matter, and still I rise, like out of all these things. So you better start recognizing the power of Black people in being the most hopeful story that you can possibly have, because there has been no group of people in the United States or in the world, honestly, the wretched of the earth, who continue to rise through the cracks, that you try to pave over our success, and we bust up through the cracks, and there's a rose in the concrete everywhere you go in all this entire world.
Resilience is our birthright.
That's right.
Resilience is our birthright.
That's right.
Yeah.
And Sharif, you wrote about this week. So you chose violence this week. Sharif
was not violent. He was not violent.
Listen, I think, you know what, you talk about like Barvo in DC, that one scene where he I'm always angry. I'm always mad. You know what I mean? That's, I feel like I've been able to just contain it, and I channel it through my work, right? I was able to get outcomes with a team of folks because we had this collective and this combination, symbiotic nature of rage and love, right? Love for our community and outrage for the conditions that are forced upon them, right? You talk about these 12-year, these are the folks who were like, oh, we can't have this emancipation. They're lazy and shiftless. What will they do? And then Kaya just, shares, right? Here's all the things that they will do, right? Right? And so when, when Frederick Douglass talks about, you're unfit to be enslaved when you have the knowledge, when you're able to be literate, when you're able to read, those things, we have to take that and use that Black blueprint from before and continue to use it today. And I think this is the beauty of Reconstruction. And I think sometimes you got to ignore stuff and know when to choose. And then sometimes you got to check some chins, right? That's just how it is. I ain't responding. I'm not responding. Bam. You gotta, you just have to know when, martial arts teachers always say, a well-placed jab is the best wake-up call, so sometimes we gotta jab a couple folks,
I actually thought the combination of your two pieces was really important. One, I'll say to both of you, thank you for modeling civil conversation, because I think so many of our adults don't actually know how to disagree respectfully. And you win when you disagree respectfully. And I think both of you did that. At the same time, pulling no punches. And what I loved, Chris, about your piece was, and this, I was a little, actually, I was expecting maybe the opposite, but what I loved about your piece, Chris, was it appealed to parents, in any parent, in a way that, like, I want what's best for my kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm out here willing to fight for it, willing to die for it. Every parent can identify with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you made us no different than any other parent out there. And, you know, people want to act like we're crazy and act like, oh, no, we are doing what every other parent is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we want people who are willing to be in that fight with us. It was a much more universal message than I usually expect from you.
See how this goes? That's when you're a problem child. When people don't expect you to do.
And then Sharif came with the 1-2. It wasn't just the jab. It was a 1-2 punch. It was a 1-2-3. It was a combination. It was a whole set of things. Yeah. There was deep. I mean, first of all, just don't even read Sharif's thing. Just click on the links and get the research, get the history, it was so chock full of, like, I have read this piece 4 or 5 times. I will say, I read the piece and I was like, I can't even touch my phone to retweet this. This Joker is so hot. But like the research, the citations, the backup for the argument are intellectually impeccable, right? And that is gorgeous. We have a tradition of Black intellectualism that Sharif just pulled down and served up. And then he was like, and what you're not going to do is tell me that you are positive and doing good things for our kids when you don't even see your blinders. You don't even see. So let me point those out for you in a constructive and positive way. And at the end of the day, for me, Sharif's piece, like Rage and Love, that was it. I wrote on my Facebook page or something that, like, this Sharif's piece invites us to a very tough conversation. It invites us to challenge in ways that many of us, not just white people, let's get real with this. There's Black people who are reading this and are feeling the prick in their heart because they're not doing right by our kids either. And so this is an opportunity for all of us. I'm using this in my whole organization. We're going to use this for selection. What do you think? What do you believe about teaching Black kids? And what I wrote on my Facebook page is, it's tough, it's hard. Like, this is going to make us all feel uncomfortable, but this is built on a foundation of love for Black children and for Black people. And that comes through in both of your pieces in an incredibly powerful way. And for all the people who think that, we're angry and we're violent and we're all of that, but it comes from a place of deep. We are. It's okay. But it is because we love our children and we love ourselves and we love our families, and we're trying to rebuild the Black community.
Yeah. And, Ray Ankrum is going to get after me because the three of us actually took this from 3 different positions on this piece. Ray did a piece that was more, I think, principle centric around principle, a take on it. I did more of a parent take on it, and Sharif chose straight up violence because Ray put out a piece first out of all of us, and it was like boom, 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 boom. It was very efficient. I put out mine, and mine was like boom, 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 boom. Sharif, this Joker writes a 4,000 word response with all kinds of links.
Kaya, this is the shorter version. So, Chris, yes,
this is the short version.
Throw that, that's too long, bro. Like,
can you send me the long version, please?
The long version was 5
I'm about to laminate this Joker and just read it from time to time when things get rough.
Listen, shout out to Chris and his team for posting, because some folks were like, nah, we ain't posting that. You know what I mean? So,
some of the folks who should have posted it, some of the folks who should be heeding the message and who were high on publicizing the other person's post, who started this discussion, had feedback that was, how can we still control the debate as white people? So let me chop up your piece in a way that favors us. And it was like, we're not having that. But one thing I do want to, since I have both of you here, you make the point, Sharif, in this piece that colorblindness is not actually what we're attempting to achieve. And what I saw a lot of response was, which is surprising, not, it shouldn't be surprising. It is surprising to me. So many people saying, I've thought my whole life that was the goal. I've been taught my whole life that's the goal. What do you mean? What are you trying to say here? And I love when you look at Reconstruction.us, it is like the opposite of color blindness. It is basically saying we are going to be unapologetically about the Black piece. Both of you have had political engagement in the public and had to deal with large numbers of educators. What's this thing about like people not getting that color blindness is not the goal?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'll let the author go. I'll let the author start us off.
Okay, all right. I mean, I think a big part of that is, when you have guilt, and I think white guilt sometimes can be really powerful, right? And so instead of saying like, hey, I'm going to channel this and use it constructively, like, yes, my answer, like we have white people who research their families and say, oh yeah, you know what? Like, actually my family this is where I got some of my wealth, or this is where I got the land, right? That scene where former Secretary John King goes and visits the land where he was enslaved, and the family, the descendants of the enslavers still live there. And what they greeted him with is, what you here for money? What you want money from us? Is that why you're here? He's like, nah, I'm just showing my family. I'm exploring my own history. I just want to see where we were. And, they couldn't wrap their brains around that. The initial was, what do you want from us? And so I think some of that is deeply tied in. And then other times folks want to, that is what whiteness does. Whiteness erases and makes whiteness the default. Because when you're saying colorblind, we could just, I think language is important. You can say just whiteness, because that's what color blindness means. It means erasure of anyone else that does not abide by my standards of everything, whether it's beauty, culture, pedagogy, whatever it is. It should only be this way.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's right. I think color blindness is laziness.
Mm-hmm.
And it is the automatic default to the status quo. If you are not colorblind, it means that you have to learn about other people, other people's history, other people's culture, right? It means you have to be intellectually curious. And it means that you have to concentrate on, you have to develop empathy. It means that you have to build relationships, right? But if you don't have to do that because the world revolves around you and everybody else, colorblind means I don't have to acknowledge that other people do things differently in different ways and what have you. And so I think it is a lazy attempt to take people off the hook for doing the hard work of learning about other people. And the reason why it's important for us to build strong Black children is, we have to live. Reconstruction was a period where Black people and white people had to renegotiate how they live together, right? The power dynamic was different. We think right now we have to renegotiate how we interact with all kinds of people that we live with. We want to shift the power dynamic. And the way you do that is being strong in yourself first. That way, when you come into contact with other people who are also strong in their history, their culture, their whatever, you can have the intellectual, tete-a-tete. You can engage in intellectual debate because you know who you are and you know where you come from. You're standing on solid ground. But what we've done with color blindness is, elevate one, depreciate the other, and then this is how they interact with one another. Oh, we are bringing our kids to the point that they know enough about themselves that they can come to the conversation prepared.
Yeah, it feels like there's a disconnect in two directions. Like there is the one group of white people who really feel like color blindness is the goal because it's the least, it's comfortable. It's the least kind of like, if they're going to be kind of civil rights people, it's the most comfortable they can be, is to say, let's just have no color matter. But for other people, I think there is this earnest thing of like, I was a child of the 60s and I was taught by my parents that, seeing color is a bad thing. And they stop there. that's the end of their growth on the issue. And
arrested development.
That's arrested development, right? And honestly, to be very honest with you, I think that's the best word, 2 words, because we're dealing with arrested development and outbreak of it nationally, where people are having to wake up and be like, I can't believe I didn't have it exactly right. I mean, you've got this viral video of a white woman at a school board meeting saying, just because I don't want my kids taught critical race theory does not make me a racist, damn it. And she's crying. And like the response was like, that's literally the definition of a racist. that's like literally the definition of something that is racist-ish.
Yeah,
Maybe it's not racist all the way, but it's racist-ish.
But it's such a lie too, right? This idea of color, because if they were colorblind, we wouldn't see the patterns that we see. Like you can predict, predict what color is going to catch what hell, because you're lying about being colorblind. You want to tell us that, but all your laws, your policy, all of that that's baked in and that gets doubled down on shows that you're not. You're actually anti-black. And you want to have this false veneer to say, no, we're colorblind. This is just how the chips fell. No, the hell it ain't. Like, this is exactly how it was engineered. That's not where the chips fell. It's where the chips were engineered. So it's a level of arrogance, laziness. It's like a combination of psychotic behavior, bro.
And this is where it's going to be like even more important, I think. If the system is going to keep doing that and being that way, supplemental learning that we take into our own hands outside of those systems is going to be our only strategy right now, because we're not going to change the system any day soon. They're not going to wake up next Tuesday and be suddenly super culturally competent. As a matter of fact, the need for parents such as myself, and I'm talking to parents directly, not educators, because educators got their own politics and organizations and theories going on. They got all their stuff going on. And let smart people argue with smart people, but smart people are going to do what smart people are going to do, which is show up to hotel conferences and talk about us without us and trade a bunch of papers that nobody's reading with a bunch of Greek letters in them. And we're not going to make any progress if we just keep letting that be the norm. I love me some educators who actually see educator as a verb, meaning that if no one is in your stay as being educated, you're not an educator, right? And some people will say to me, Chris, have you ever taught? And I will pull up their school and their outcomes, and I will say, obviously you haven't either. So obviously we have something in common. Neither one of us have taught. But when I talk to parents, this is what I'm saying. It's in your hands. You've got to find supplemental education, alternative education. Out of school time might be your primary time to make sure you don't raise culturally backwards, retrograde children. That might be your only chance to do it. I know we're coming up on an hour. I wanted to ask, I had a question for you, Kaya, just about, I follow you on Instagram and on the socials. I be living vicariously. You be on beaches eating like shrimps and stuff, shrimps with different flavors and cracked open lobsters and just all kinds of, there's sunshine. It's sunshine.
Work hard, play hard.
But my question is not to hate on the fact that your Instagram is like Beyonce's. But it's more to say, how much of this stuff that we talk about locally here in the United States that feels like a domestic situation is more global, or there's like similar problems going on elsewhere?
Similar problems all over the place, right? All over the place. Somebody's in power and somebody's catching hell. And the education system, just like here, reinforces those power dynamics. And everybody is trying to get free around the world. And I spent 2 years visiting communities literally all over the world and helping communities come together to say, you get to decide what you want education to look like. And here's how you need to work differently with the system in order to demand and receive what you want. The way we did our work in DC public schools, maybe because I hadn't, come up through the ranks of traditional education. I was a very untraditional superintendent. I didn't follow the path. I also, that meant that I didn't rely on my own expertise to figure out what the solutions were. I fundamentally believed that these schools were not my schools. These schools were our schools, right? So we as a community were going to make decisions about how we transformed our school district. And that's how I was spending my time running around the world, helping communities to understand these are your schools. So you get to say what you want to see. You get to say you don't want drill and kill. You want art and music and PE and foreign language. You get to say you want to see your indigenous language or your indigenous culture reflected in what your children are learning. You get to say, don't just, prepare my kids for jobs, prepare my kids for careers, or prepare my kids to stay in their towns and transform them, not leave and go to the city. We get to decide that. And part of the problem that we have right now is we've forgotten that we have power. I had power when I was the superintendent of DC public schools, but I have even more power as the CEO of Reconstruction, because I get to decide what our kids learn. I get to give them courses in spoken word, in cooking, in academics, in whatever, right? And that's what Freedom Friday is all about. We get to decide what our kids learn, and we don't just need to rely on government schools. And I say that having run government schools.
See, Kaya choosing violence in the morning. Everybody just
I'm not choosing violence. I am choosing a path of least resistance to freedom for my children.
There you go. All right, Sharif. As we wrap, any final questions for our illustrious guests?
Listen, not necessarily a question, but I want to just shout out. Listen, my daughters have taken the courses multiple times, and they love it. One's 5, the other one's 7. And it's one of the things they get to do together, and they absolutely love it. The content, the creativity, and it just reminds me of like what Black folks used to do. And so I love the title, and I shouldn't say used to do, because Black folks are doing this in communities and things like that all the time. So I definitely misspoke there, but I love how it's organized in a way where it's a concerted effort to do this. And, we've spoken before about owning out of school time as like a first big step to then, and simultaneously building more of our schools, right? So if we can do this out of school time, that means, hey, you know what? You could do this as a full-time thing, right? And continuing that effort. So it's not just a detox center. It is now more of a affirming and empowering center. Yeah. And I think that can really help, because I think a lot of times we're in reaction, like, oh, how do I detox and support this child to, unbrainwash them for that? Where this is more like, no, this is going to affirm you, it's going to educate you, and it's going to embolden you so that you can be that problem child for the future. So I just want to say thank you, Queen Kaya, for continuing to, to lead. Leaders lead, right? Like, and no matter what settings they are, right? Like, some folks who are superintendents, they retire, and you're like, well, they weren't really leading then, and they're not leading now. And some leave there and they start leading on bigger and grander scales. And I 100% agree. Like, sometimes the flexibility, the freedom to fully implement your vision is actually outside of the constraints of various systems.
Yeah, I mean, we did amazing work in DC public schools, right? When I got there in 2007, it was the lowest performing urban school district in the country, according to the NAEP. When I left, it was the fastest improving. I've been gone almost 5 years, and it's still the fastest improving, despite lots of leadership changes and whatnot. We did deep academic and extracurricular work that is still paying off for kids. And I was like, I need to do more of that, and I need to do it on my terms. And that is why I'm doing what I'm doing at Reconstruction.
And I just want to remind folks, you can find Reconstruction. It's reconstruction.us. This is it. Unapologetically Black education, personal world-class education at home for $10 per session.
Absolutely.
So I don't want none of y'all people talking to me about, oh my God, I can't afford this and that and the other. If you think,
it's at a great price point.
Right. And whoever said it, I don't know who said it first, but if you think that the price of education is high, you should try ignorance. And we don't want that. We don't want you to try ignorance. We want you to try a little bit of violence and a lot of bit of education. So choose love for your people or whatnot. Please go check this out. Reconstruction.us. This is the platform that Kaya is the founder and CEO of. Get Nothing But Great.
Co-founder. Shout out to my co-founder, Roland Fryer, who has been in this with me from day one. And yeah, we're doing it.
And the amazing team. Everybody should go
And we
and
have
look
an
at
awesome
yes,
team.
an awesome team. One of my
Wait,
faves,
can I
Kenya
say
Bradshaw is there now. Kenya Bradshaw's there now. So
okay,
this
wait,
is,
let me say this one thing. My
yeah.
team would kill me. So we're doing a
Yeah.
Juneteenth celebration
Oh,
where
wow.
the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday of Juneteenth, we're having a family barbecue, virtual family barbecue. We are doing free Reconstruction classes, so you can come on and get a taste of Reconstruction for free that weekend. We're doing things with key partners like Step Africa. There'll be a huge step show that you can get for free. We're doing Reconstruction Fam Jam, which is our dance party that we did over New Year's. It'll be a weekend full of activities that you just sign up. You can get a virtual toolkit and participate in a whole bunch of stuff with us. Come hang out with us on Emancipation Day, our Emancipation Day, Juneteenth, that whole weekend. And yeah, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You'll see a bunch of links and posts about that coming in the next week.
Is this information about the Juneteenth stuff, is this on the site now, or it'll be coming?
It'll be up in the next week.
Okay. All right. Well, people be watching, pay attention. I'm also getting violence from my other 8 black hands here. Charles and Ray.
Hey, Cole.
They're watching. Dr. Cole is, when are we going to get the invite to Pod Save America? So anyways, say it's Pod Save the People. So
what y'all want to do? Let me go talk to my boss at Pod Save the People and see what we could do.
Talk to the team. Bring in, bring the world-class wrecking crew of education. We are the world-class wrecking crew of education. Bring us there. Listen, it has been another Freedom Friday, and we are still not free, but hopefully you're freer at the end of this hour than you were at the beginning. We think that we have given you some key steps to your freedom. Consider the supplemental education, the out-of-school time of your children as a very powerful time that you could use to make sure that you're raising culturally prepared problem children who create a problem for the system. And I don't mean the problem the way that we problematize our kids. I mean a problem in the way that we have a system that values obedience and values kind of ignorance in too many ways, but we want to send them what Kaya said, Black super children who ask all the right questions, think about the system critically, and change the system, become the leaders that we need to free us in the future. So thank you again for watching. We appreciate any time that you give to the education of our children.